Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of the Duck Ladies Pondcast. I'm your host, Krissy from Dunkin Ducks, here with
Emily from Cheese and Quackers Homestead, and the tiniest new flock member that we have.
Does he have a name?
No, I haven't picked one out yet. I have to read through all of the comments on our naming post because I usually let our followers name them, but I have no idea.
Well, if you're listening, make sure to go to that post and comment some name ideas so we can name this cute little baby.
Yeah, help me out. I have 2 to name, and I'm torn because it's like the last 2 ducklings I'm going to be naming for a while, and I want them to have really, really good names. And so that's why I feel like it's taking me so long.
On today's episode, we're going to be discussing if ducks are the right pet for you. Our breed of the week featured this week is going to be the white layer duck, and we're going to be answering some questions that our listeners left on our social posts. But before we get started, I want to check in on any updates on the homestead this week. So Emily, have you had any new news this week?
Obviously, we got some new babies in, which seems crazy because we also got babies in last week. But this was actually the second part of my last order that just came in a week later because sometimes hatches don't go as expected. And that's the biggest news. Outside of that, deep litter clean out. We've been doing our deep litter clean out, which is depressing news. We've been miserable doing that for the last week. I think we started with the call duck flock yesterday. It was disgusting. We still have to do the big duck coop, which is like every year the worst project. So not looking forward to that. And then we have the goats and the bunnies and everybody else. But other than that, we're finally getting some spring-like weather and I'm so excited.
That's so exciting.
Goji's eye is doing very well because that was like our one illness. And I didn't end up having to treat with antibiotics. I just used that saline flush, kept it clean. She had a torn third eyelid. So she had that little, or kind of like cannoli did last year. But yeah, never had to use the antibiotics. She healed up perfectly, and it's a weight off my shoulders. I'm so relieved because I hate starting the antibiotics because then I have to finish it. So big wins over here. How about you?
Right. I'm so happy for you that you're having better weather and that she's okay. Yes. Not much going on this week. I did finally decide on names for 2 of my baby chicks. I originally got a batch of 16. I'm only keeping 4 of them. I'm having a very hard time deciding which 4 to keep, but 2 of them have names so far, so they're definitely named. I named the Splash Morans Pickles, and the blue-laced red Wyandotte I named Taco. Actually, Duck Dad named it Taco. I was like, we're not naming it Taco. And he goes, actually, we are naming it Taco. And I said, okay, it's Taco.
You always gotta let the Duck Dad name one. That's the rule.
Yes, that's exactly how it goes here, too. But not much else is new around here. I've also been cleaning out my pens because we had like a brief break in some better weather. So I was like, gotta take this opportunity and clean them out. I cleaned out the pigeon pen this morning, which was disgusting.
Pigeon droppings are almost worse because they dry on everything. And they're like impossible to get off. Like duck droppings don't really do that.
Let's get into our topics for this week. We want to start off this week by going back in time and thinking about when we first got ducks. And the reason we want to do this is because although we are like super excited to dive really deep into topics on this podcast, we also want to give beginners a little bit of firsthand information on if ducks are even the right pet for them. So if they're listening in, they can really decide if ducks are a good fit for their family. So I want to set some realistic expectations here of what to expect from pet ducks. So Emily, can you tell me about the mess that ducks make?
So they're really, really messy. I'm going to bring something kind of unique to this conversation because I think that there is a big difference between standard duck mess and bantam duck mess. I really don't harp on the mess of my bantams. It's really manageable and you can keep them in an aviary fairly comfortably. So the mess it's contained, it's smaller. Smaller birds means smaller poops. Smaller mud puddles. And so the bantams in themselves, I don't think are that messy of animals. Compared to a chicken, absolutely. They're completely 2 different ball games. But the mess of standards is insane. Standards I find exceptionally difficult to keep in a pen. Big mess, big birds. They need lots of room in order to not turn the entire thing to mud. I think the ground rule is 100 square feet per bird is what you're going to want to be shooting for if you want to even maintain ground cover. And I have 100 square feet per bird in my big duck flock, for example, and we don't have any more ground cover. I have to actually expand that now in order to give them that. So the mess is real, and it's definitely something that you need to be okay with your property maybe not looking perfect anymore. If you're going to keep a large flock of standards and even call ducks, I mean, we can't grow grass in the call pen. Never going to happen.
Yeah. the amount of work it takes in different seasons to really care for ducks. Like, life is so good for us in the spring and the summer and even the fall. And then winter comes and it's muddy snow and it's a blizzard and you still have to go outside and take care of them. It could be rain, snow, sleet, whatever. You still have to go outside and take care of them. So if you don't want to be going outside in all kinds of weather, ducks might not be the right pet for you.
No.
Unless, I mean, I don't like going outside in all kinds of weather, but I'm willing to do it for them because I love them so much.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the biggest things when deciding are ducks right for you, even if you have chickens at home, ducks are a big commitment and they're a larger commitment than chickens. Chickens, honestly, nowadays with technology, you can basically manage your flock remotely. Like, I know people that go on vacation and they take care of them over their phones with their security cameras and their automatic coop doors. None of that applies to ducks because ducks don't put themselves away at night like chickens do. Ducks can see in the dark, so that means that pretty much every single night you have to be out there either ensuring that your birds got into the coop safely at nightfall or making them go in, which is usually the case with ours, no matter how much they know it's time to go in. They don't want to, so we have to usher them all in, shut the door, make sure everybody's secure for the night, and that is every single night, no missed days. There's no, I'm gonna be home late. It's, I gotta be home, you know, and it's especially if you're free-ranging your birds. We have a little bit of wiggle room with secure aviaries where I'm sure Krissy, like if you're getting home a little bit late and the ducks are out past dark, they're still in a secure pen. When it comes to my big duck flock, we have never missed a day. They've never been out past dark. The only time that they've ever seen darkness while they were outside was the eclipse. Do you remember the eclipse last year? I sat and I watched the eclipse with the big duck flock because I was like, I'm so excited to see how they react to this and like how weird it is for them to like think they didn't put us away. And all of my big ducks got in the pond and they all like cuddled into the middle and they looked so stressed. They were like, what is going on? And then 2 minutes later it became bright again and they were like, what?
I tried to film a video that day of Sugar and I was gonna make it like some funny thing of like her causing the eclipse or whatever. And she ended up running under my deck and my friend had to crawl under the deck and go and get her out.
That's so funny. It's very Sugar. I don't blame her though. I was a little sketched out when that happened. I was like, is it gonna come back? Like, it felt wrong. But that's a huge thing you need to keep in mind. And that's my biggest thing, I think, that you need to really account for because it's a massive responsibility having to be home every single day at that time. And I know a lot of people work and their work schedule might not allow for that. And that means you have to have somebody that's able to do it. I used to work before I did this full time. I used to work a really weird schedule, and Dee Dee still works a really weird schedule. And we literally had to make sure that our schedules would be able to allow for one of us to be home at nightfall, even when that changes seasonally. So it's a big commitment.
For sure. Especially as the time changes. It's like so crazy because the ducks don't realize that suddenly the clocks went back or not. They just care that you put them to bed when the sun sets, and they prefer to be out as soon as the sun comes up, but sometimes we do like to sleep in a little bit.
And the predators for sure don't care that the clock got changed. The minute it gets dark, that predator risk increases drastically. It's just so important that you're putting them away at appropriate times. It's crazy how much, if you pay attention to the wildlife, the minute that nightfall hits, they're out. And especially owls, that's a big one, because owls are going to be a big predator for your backyard ducks. And the minute it starts to get dusk out, you'll start to hear the owls going off. And so you have to make sure you're on top of it. I actually recommend 30 minutes before sunset. That's what I do, if I can, especially with my standard flock, not with my call flock. They always get put away last because they're in a secure pen. But my standard flock is in 30 minutes before sunset because they have an open top aviary and an owl can take out your birds. And they're up and hunting before it's fully dark outside. So I like to do it a little bit early. I don't like to be putting them away in the dark. It also helps you be able to see what birds you got in and what birds you missed better. You're not looking around with a flashlight.
I would also add on their water requirements and how it's also hard to leave them because you can't leave them without water. And it's not like a huge deal if they're drinking from their muddy pond. They make their water bowls dirty in minutes, especially in the summer when I clean out the bowl and they immediately swim in the dirty mud puddle that the dumped bowl created and then jump in the clean bowl to clean themselves off from the mud they just swam in. But it's really important for ducks to have access to water. So if you are planning on leaving for a few days, most of the time ducks will splash out all of the water in their water bowl in that time, or just make it absolutely disgusting and like thick mud. So you really do have to be giving them fresh water every day. So whereas the chickens, I can fill up their chicken waterer and it can have enough water in there for a few days to last them because they're not splashing it all out. And like, yeah, there's some things you can do to try and stop the ducks from splashing all of their water out. But I wouldn't feel comfortable leaving a duck without a human checking on it every day to ensure that they have water.
I agree. I think you could do that. I think you could definitely get away with that with chickens, and you just can't with ducks. The water thing is such a huge concern with the choking risk of them not having water, or even just not having enough water. And then there's also the concern of if they're left without water for too long, they could drink themselves to death. So if you have a situation, you want to know that they've had water recently. And then reintroducing water, if they've been without water for too long, is a process within itself because you have to be careful. So I would not leave my ducks alone for over 24 hours. I don't leave my ducks alone ever because I'm crazy. But what we do when we go out of town, and you do, I'm sure you do this too, is you get a pet sitter. And so you have somebody that's here basically doing everything that you would do, putting the animals away at night. But it is scary to trust somebody with all of those things. Honestly, before going into getting these animals, you have to know that you are not only prepared, but you have a good support system of people who are going to be willing to take over and do a good job when you're not able to be there, because we all have things that make it so that we can't be here, whether it be vacation or an emergency. You want to know that you have somebody that you can call. If it's a neighbor, neighbors are great. And I think a good thing you could do getting into backyard poultry, especially ducks, is talk to your neighbors and see if that's something they'd be willing to do. Hey, if I'm going to be getting out of work late, would you be willing to drop over and lock my birds up for me, and I'll feed and water them when I get home? That's awesome. If you have people in your life that can do that, that means you should be good to go, but it is good to set those connections up before you bring your birds home.
Yeah, especially if you happen to have a neighbor that has chickens or ducks, they'll probably be more comfortable with it, and that's what I prefer to do. I'll like panic and be like, did I close the duck door? And I've always closed the duck door, but I'll panic and think, did I close it? And I have a couple neighbors with chickens, so I know that they get it and they'll go over and check on them.
But
I totally agree with you.
Too.
I totally agree with you on the whole pet sitter thing. I absolutely have to have somebody be here with them. And it's very scary for me because I always worry that if something were to go wrong, it's like, would they notice? Like, would they notice that a duck is egg bound, or would they just think, oh, that one's a little sleepy?
That's huge.
So, yeah. Also, speaking of noticing if there's something going wrong, another thing that I think people really need to be prepared for when owning a flock animal and any exotic animal is vet care, and knowing that, of course, we would like to encourage people to go to a vet if you can, and if you have access to one that can help you. But a lot of people don't have access to a vet, or they can't afford it. So when you get these animals, you really should be looking into problems in advance and knowing how to solve them. And I think you really have to consider if you will be able to handle solving medical problems for your birds yourself, or at least trying. Are you willing to train yourself how to give them a syringe with medication? Because if you do it wrong, it could cause some severe problems. Are you willing to handle blood and that kind of thing? Like, really consider if you are willing to essentially be your own vet for your ducks if needed. Obviously, if you can find a good avian vet in your area before you even get the ducks and find out that they take ducks, that's amazing. But I think people should really be prepared for that aspect of this. And also the aspect that I think a lot of people who only ever grew up with, say, like a dog or a cat don't necessarily understand when it comes to owning a flock animal, especially if you have larger numbers. You are going to be dealing with loss more often simply because of the fact that you have more animals and they don't live forever. It sucks. It sucks to lose a duck no matter what, whether it's expected or unexpected or old age or a predator. I think it kind of takes a certain kind of person to be able to handle that and continue moving on and caring for the rest of the flock that you have to the best of your ability. So it's almost like, I want to say, ducks aren't necessarily for the faint of heart.
Whenever I lose a duck, I say, oh, this is so nice. I signed myself back up for this like 60 more times. Like when I'm crying, I'm like,
yep,
I get to go through this so many more times. I can say personally, the grieving has never outweighed the daily joy that my animals bring me, but it's hard. Like, and it is, there's always the people that say, if you can't handle it, like, you can't farm. Shut up. That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Absolutely.
It just means you loved your animal. We should all be feeling sad when we lose an animal. It's a part of the love that we have for them.
I'm the queen of being sad when a pet dies. You might not.
Me too.
Like,
I bawl.
Don't even get me started. You'll make me cry.
I've seen you deal with pet death. I know you cry too. I cry like a baby. Yeah. Another thing that I think people should really be prepared for is you don't really know how you're going to handle a sick animal until you handle a sick animal. I mean, it's a lot like an emergency. Your emotions are very heightened, and sometimes you find out that you can't handle those situations when you're in the middle of one of those situations. There's a lot of gross things that you're going to have to do to take care of your backyard ducks, especially if there's an emergency and a vet is not available. I think me and Krissy can both say that we've stuck a finger up a duck's vent. And that is that's a wall that you hit when you know you love that bird, when you're sitting there and you're like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to feel what this feels like. I don't want to do it. I don't have good enough gloves to feel like doing this. But sometimes when a vet's not there and you have an emergency that is life or death and it's going to be you. And you have to know that you can handle those situations and handle them well because they're hard.
And sometimes even if you do have a vet, there was one situation in particular where I took a duck to the vet for egg binding. She had gotten, I can't remember the name of the 2 injections, but she had gotten, care from the vet, and then the vet was able to like lubricate her vent area, and then she told me to go home and continue lubricating her vent area until she laid the egg. So yes, the vet did it, but I still had to go home and stick a finger up a duck's vent again, which not fun.
I thought I was spared. It is, there's a lot of gross things that you're going to have to deal with. Infection is disgusting. It's tough, and you really don't know what your stomach's going to be like. You don't know what you're going to be able to stomach. You don't know what you're going to be able to do until that straight up happens. And the biggest thing, I think, is knowing how you handle emergencies. And, let me tell you, I know how to handle emergencies. I worked in EMS for 6 years, and I've dealt with people emergencies, and when one of my animals goes down, I'm a mess. I am not the person I was. It's so true, though. I am a disaster. I'm not the person I was when I was in that job because there's so much emotion tied to it. It's so hard to think clearly when you care so much for the animal. And so I'm all over the place. And it's funny how that doesn't even correlate. So even if you think you're good at handling emergencies, and you've never experienced something like a pet that you really, really love going down, and you're the last line of defense, and you're making the decisions about something that really matters to you, you have no idea how you're going to handle it. And I handle it bad. I'll be honest, I handle it so bad.
That's why you got to have duck friends, because having someone that you can call to just talk it through and be like, this is what I think is happening. This is what I plan on doing. Is that right? Because you're so emotionally invested, sometimes it can almost blur your thinking. So I think it's always good to talk through it with somebody, especially before you do any kind of medical intervention. And that's what we do for each other. So
yeah. When I call Krissy in those situations, the conversation sounds like, logically, I know this, 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 and this, but I feel this, this, and this, and I don't want to do this. You'll have your logical thoughts. You'll know what you need to do for the animal, but then your emotional thoughts come in. And we just went through that a lot with Dipper. I wanted to keep Dipper alive so bad. Like, all of me did. And I think for 3 days straight of Dipper's end of life, it was me and Krissy texting. And it was us just saying, like, you were very nicely hyping me up to say goodbye. And I just kept on being like, but maybe this, but maybe I should wait. And I could feel that in myself, and I had to fight it. Like, the entire time, I had to fight me wanting to find an excuse to hold on. I had to step back and say, that's me trying to protect myself, not me trying to protect the animal. Turn it off. Get out of this. Get your emotions out of this. Think about this as what I would say to somebody if they were asking me what to do and I had no stake in the game. And it's hard. Like, it is such a real weight that we carry as caretakers for these animals to be able to make calls. Because sometimes the first call you're ever going to make is going to be that the bird needs to be put down. And sometimes you're going to have to be comfortable making that call, not knowing what's wrong. If you can't get a vet, there's a chance that the animal's suffering to the point that something needs to be done, and you never get that certainty. So you have to be comfortable being like, I got to put this bird down and it has to be my decision. I decided that this was past the point where quality of life is good and I got to let them go. And that is I was like a mess over that with Dipper. Do you remember? I was calling you and I was like, Krissy, I don't want to put her down and have my judgment of what's wrong with her as the last say, because what if I was wrong? And then I have to live with that. I mean, granted, I'll never know, but it'll always be this unknown and you have to be comfortable with those unknowns.
So one of the reasons that I really wanted to give people an honest list of things that they should expect before they get pet ducks is to prevent people from having to rehome their duck. It's not a bad thing to have to rehome an animal if you can't care for it, but I would rather people not get ducks in the first place if they're not going to work out in the long run. And I want people to understand what to expect as far as a proper ratio of male to female ducks. So again, you're not ending up in a situation where you have to rehome them and you do love all of them dearly. I really don't want people to be like dumping ducks into the wild. That's cruel. It's horrible for the ducks. It's horrible for the environment. It's horrible for wild ducks. So I want to set realistic expectations for people. And I'm really glad that we're able to do this podcast so we can dive into topics that aren't necessarily super fun to give people a real taste of what owning ducks is like.
No matter what you go through with your ducks, nothing warrants you making the decision to dump them into the wild. In my opinion, that is the most selfish decision. It's selfish and I don't want to sound like I'm coming down on you, but I am if you do that. It's selfish because it has horrible impacts on wild populations, horrible impacts on environments like Krissy was saying, and it's torture for them. They can't properly forage. Through domestication, we've taken away their abilities to forage like wild ducks are able to take care of themselves and eat. So they're scared. They're suffering, they're used to humans, and they're going to seek humans. Humans aren't always going to provide safe and good food, and you're setting them up for just a really, really brutal end. So one thing to keep in mind is ducklings grow really fast. They're only ducklings for a very, very short period of time. I have ducklings in the brooder that are a week old, and they're already huge. It's insane. I was looking at the ones I got a week after the first batch, and I'm like, really? Like, that was that last week? That's insane. And it throws me off every single time. So as cute as it is to have an adorable little duckling and how exciting that is and how easy that is because you could keep them in your house and they can be in your office or wherever and you could play with them inside, that's going to be a giant duck very soon. That's pooping once every 20 minutes, making a complete mess, smelling horribly, especially if they're in your house. A good old fresh duck poop indoors where it's like closed in. Ugh. So it's never worth it. It's never worth it for the short period of time you have a baby for. And if you happen to be listening and you're hearing all of this and you're like, oh my God, I don't want an adult duck, but I want a duckling, talk to a farmer. A lot of farmers will actually offer people to raise their ducklings. Like if you have young kids that are interested in keeping ducks or you just are interested, but you don't want to commit to the full thing yet, you want to see how you like it. A lot of farmers will offer out people to raise up some ducks and then they take them back once they're ready to be outside and grown up. It's a great thing. We've actually done it for people. We've had people who like, I really want to raise ducks, but I don't want to keep ducks. And we're like, here you go. You could raise some ducklings, bring them back to us when they're full grown. And I usually only do it with people that I trust because I'm paranoid. Yeah, he got to raise ducklings and guess what? That man does not have ducks.
So duck rescues that will let people foster ducklings that were surrendered to them and then again give them back to the rescue once they're ready to move outside. And there's also, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but there's this company called Rent the Chicken and they actually rent out chickens. So you can rent a chicken for I think like 4 to 6 months. And so they bring the coop to you, which is already set up, enough food for them, I think a bag of bedding, and then like 2 or 3 chickens, depending on the size of the coop that you get. And you can just keep them during the nice warm months where it's easier to keep chickens, and then they take them back in the winter. And I think it's actually a good program because it allows people to find out if this is something they really want to do before they jump into it.
I actually kind of like that program. I feel like my initial thought is to not like it, but for the exact reasons that you said, it does kind of make sense. Plus, if you're really there's always the people, no matter how much I wish they didn't exist, there's always the people that do it for social media or it's like a fad for them. You know, they get into it, but then they're like, I hate this. And then they get rid of all these birds or dump them into the wild.
Right.
And that is a perfect option for them. The only reason I feel like I don't like it is because I don't trust each individual to take proper care.
Yes, I hear you. I think they have figured things out really well as far as teaching people how to raise chickens. I believe it comes with a book too on like what, you have to do. But I think it's better for people to rent a chicken, find out if they like chickens, than be on the fence about it, get them anyway, end up with 5 roosters they have to rehome. I think the rental option is a lot better.
You know what we really need though? Regulations on purchasing.
9 states that have regulations for minimums, but not enough.
New York, we have to get 6. I kind of hate it though.
Did you know that Rhode Island you have to get 12?
Hell yeah. I think it's
I don't know if that's ducks and chickens or just chickens. And there's
12
also
ducks. 12 ducks is a lot. You don't need 12 ducks. So that is a little brutal on the duck side of things, but for chickens I think you should need 12.
There's also I think it's also in Rhode Island, or maybe it's a specific city in Rhode Island, but they have it's a really high minimum. It's 25 or something, but only in the months of April and May to prevent people from just buying them for Easter, which that's a high number, but...
Ooh, that's smart though. I like that.
Yeah.
That's another thing to remember is there is a minimum amount of ducks you can keep. We did not get into that in the last part. I think, so my personal minimum that I would say for you is don't get less than 3, period. Don't just get 2. It's a nightmare because then you start to get into, this is where duck math gets crazy, right? Because so you get 2, 1 dies. Now you have 1 duck. You can't just get 1 more duckling. So now you get 3. And so then your numbers start multiplying. So always get 3. And I think that if you even just are getting adults, still always get a minimum of 3. 4 is better if you could do it. So if something happens to 1, you never have a duck that's alone. It's going to save you so much heartache. It's awful having a duck by themselves. So that's a very important thing to keep in mind is that you can't just have 1. You can't have it in your house. You can't have 1 house duck. You got to make sure that you have the outdoor space. You got to make sure that you're going to be able to set up a safe coop. All of those things are really important when you're thinking about getting ducks or ducklings.
Right. And one more thing that you absolutely have to look into before you bring your ducks home is, are you even allowed to keep ducks where you live? Because a lot of cities, towns, homeowners associations have banned ducks. And if they haven't banned ducks, they may have specific regulations on how far your coop has to be from property lines, how far your compost has to be from property lines. You might have to apply for a permit for them. Your property might have to be zoned for agriculture in order to have them. Some towns don't understand that drakes are quieter than hens, and they just put a blanket statement, no male poultry allowed because of roosters. So you really have to look into your specific town or homeowners association's laws and bylaws before you bring them home, because you don't want to have to bring them home, find out you can't keep them, get fined, and then end up having to rehome them and struggle to find somewhere for them to go. Where I lived prior to this, you actually had to have 10 acres to even have a single duck or chicken, which was really funny because you only needed 1 acre to have a horse. So that was kind of crazy. And I was actually involved in going to the town meetings to change that ordinance. So the town I used to live in now has changed their ordinance. So you only need 1 acre to own chickens.
Seriously. That's silly. We're zoned agricultural, so we have no issues. We can do whatever we want.
Yeah.
And if anybody has issues with our birds, I'll be like, too bad. Which is great.
Shouldn't have bought a house in an agricultural zone.
We're really lucky that we don't really have any regulations or anybody giving us a hard time ever. So, big wins.
Most of my neighbors also have farms, whether it be horses or chickens, and my neighbors also have roosters, so I feel like my birds are the least of the problems in this area. Although everybody kind of just expects it because it's
the call ducks are bad. The call ducks are I am my call ducks neighbor. I live next to them, and they're awful.
My neighbors always say that the ducks sound like they're laughing.
They're loud. The call ducks are loud. My standard flock isn't bad, but when they pop off, they're loud. My geese are terrible. Somebody asked me the other day if geese are loud, and geese are so loud that I forget to even mention that, because it's in my head it's just a granted thing, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas, like, it's kind of a shock to people that ducks can be really loud, but the geese are like a car alarm. Like, that thing is
Because
loud.
if you go and look at mallards on a lake, they're probably being pretty quiet.
Yeah.
I've heard
really
wild
quiet.
mallards quack, but not like my call ducks quack every time I open the back door.
Yeah, no. Or when they see you. My standard flock, too. Oh my God, I was laughing so hard the other day because Dee Dee is the food guy. Because I've had so many shoulder surgeries, so I can't carry things. So he does all the feed. And so he carries the big feed thing around. And because of that, when I go outside, everybody's quiet, except for like when they think I have treats, but everybody's quiet. When Dee Dee goes outside, it is so loud. The entire farm, like, explodes. Like, the goats are screaming, the big duck flock screaming, the call ducks are screaming. And I was, like, crying, laughing, thinking about that the other day, because I had never actually processed it. And I was like, his life is awful. Because the minute he goes out there, there's, like, a million animals that, like, I brought into his life, just begging for his attention. It's so
He
funny.
loves it, though.
He does. He loves the ducks, but it makes me laugh so hard because I'm like, that poor man, he's never experienced silence, like, outside. Last thing I want to add in this section is no matter how much you feel like this, like, if you listen to this whole thing or you've been doing all this research into ducks and you're like, I'm good, I want this animal, everything about it aligns with me, always have a plan. The best thing you could ever do for yourself is have a rehoming plan. What's going to happen if something comes up, if you get them, because no amount of us sitting here and telling you what it's like to keep birds is really going to prepare you for your experience keeping birds. So always have somebody who you know, like, would take them if something happens. Say you know a farmer and you have like a game plan, or even just being involved in groups where you know you can move birds around. Because I think both of us can speak to the fact that you basically never make it out scotch-free without rehoming an animal in these giant flock settings. It's going to happen. People like get there, they don't understand that, especially looking in from other animal communities, but flock dynamics are a real thing. Just because you love two birds does not mean they're going to love each other. I've had to rehome birds, not because I wanted to, or it was because they literally didn't work here. So always having a game plan of how you're going to handle those situations is a really good idea. Making sure you're involved in plenty of groups that give you plenty of connections to other people. That makes the rehoming process much easier. And even if you know somebody and you know that they'd be able to take some animals if something goes wrong. I mean, I think you probably had that situation too, where you have two birds that just are never going to get along. And you're like,
yeah, I ran into that with my standard ducks and my bantam ducks. I had to rehome my standards, which were mostly drakes, because I could not. I was trying so hard to even just keep them separated, but the call ducks would fly over the fence and then get hurt by the standard ducks. And I was like, it has to be one or the other just for the situation that I was in. I didn't have a better way to separate them at that time. I think I was probably 16 at the time. So luckily I had a lot of friends that also raise ducks and chickens. So they went to a friend of mine who has like a 1 acre pond, and then she has like separate pens for different types of birds. And they went there and she had a lot more female ducks that were standard size. So I think that was really good for them, honestly. And I'm glad that I had that connection. So I knew that they were going somewhere where they would be safe and loved and live a good life. And as hard as that was for me, I'm glad I did it, because one way or another, the call ducks were just going to keep getting hurt. And you have to make those hard decisions because you are responsible for your birds. You can't let them keep getting hurt like that.
Yeah.
So.
And you can only do so much. I mean, you guys, if you follow us on Cheese and Quackers, you saw me go through, I built out a pen and to save Omelet, because I was going to have to rehome Omelet because he was like messing up the females. And I was like, this is awful. And you saw me go through the chaos of building out a second pen so that I could do a batch flock and keep all my boys in that pen. And then later, this past year, we ran into a situation. I had kept 2 more drakes because I had the batch pen, so I had the place for them. And those 2 boys did not get along with everybody in the batch pen. We started to have some bullying issues in the batch pen, and ducks were getting hurt. And I said, I draw the line. I can't just keep sectioning birds off into areas. You know, I draw the line here. Male ducks' existence here depends firmly on them being able to exist in the batch pen. And if I keep these 2 birds, somebody's going to end up getting hurt, and I got to move them along. It's gonna happen, and there's always this rehoming stigma where it's like, I would never rehome. You cannot bring that into this realm. You can't bring it over to the homesteading side of things. It's gonna happen.
I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing to just say, I am not a good duck owner. This is not a good fit for me, and find somebody who can take better care of them. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because ducks they're not like some other animals that are like very likely to be like super attached to you and your home. You put them in with their flock and they're good. They're happy. They just
throw them
outside
with a new flock. I remember the first time I ever rehomed ducks, I was crying so much, and I was like, they're gonna miss us. And I brought them to the new house, and I put them on the ground, and they saw a pond, and they were all like, bye. And so ever since then, I still get sad for me, but I don't get sad for them. They don't get very attached to their environment. The whole shaming the rehoming situation, keeping ducks is not like keeping a dog. When you get a dog, you have a comprehensive understanding of what keeping a dog is like. Everybody has that. If you didn't grow up around poultry or even just ducks, say you had chickens and then you get into ducks, like I said, there's no amount of me sitting here and Krissy sitting here explaining the experience to you that's going to prepare you for the experience. So if you even did thorough research, but you're just like, I am not having a good time, move them along. Because guess what? Somebody does love it. And it's not a bad thing to find out that this just doesn't jive with you. Like, that's totally fine. And they're better off at a home where the relationship is mutually beneficial than they are you suffering through their care, and don't feel guilty about that. I firmly believe that. I am like the biggest advocate for trying to protect people who have to make those hard decisions. I think it's the kindest thing you can do is decide that you're not doing this animal justice and it's going to be better somewhere else. And I think that that's wonderful if you're able to say that about yourself. It says a lot about you as a caretaker, and it says you care about them. So,
absolutely. Moving on, it's now time for us to discuss our breed of the week. And for this Waterfowl Wednesday, we decided to feature the white layer ducks. And we picked this breed specifically because Emily texted me and said, I have a lot of things to say about the white layer duck. So, Emily, what do you have to say about the white layer duck?
So much. If you guys don't know, we got a white layer in our Metzer Farms egg layer bundle. I didn't know that much about it, but it is now one of my favorite breeds to teach people about, because I think we talked about it in last episode, and I talk about it all the time. I'm not a big fan of the Pekin for beginner duck keepers. I'm a huge fan of the white layer as an option for beginner duck keepers because I think it's a great alternative to the Pekin. So the cool thing about the white layer is it has that beautiful all white plumage, just like the Pekin does, but you're getting it at a fraction of the size of the Pekin. So they usually the white layer weighs about 4 to 5 pounds. I think the Drakes go 5 pounds. And so it's a lighter weight breed. It's a great producer. So if you're looking for eggs in your backyard, I know that Pekins can be considered to be a pretty decent layer. This is an even better layer. So it basically rules out the Pekin for you, especially if you're not going to be doing meat production, which is primarily the use of the Pekin duck. So we have a white layer named Cupcake. I love her. It is a Metzer Farms original hybrid. They actually developed that breed, which is awesome. I think they developed it shortly after the Golden 300. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure they developed the Golden 300, and then a lot of people wanted a white layer bird. So that's how we got the white layer. And I freaking love this breed. Great personality. I've found that they have an awesome personality. I think let me check that egg production really quick. Get you an exact number, because we're going to talk about egg production in breed of the week. An important thing to note when we're talking about egg production is the actual egg production of the ducks that you get is going to be highly dependent on the breeding stock and the averages that they're seeing. Metzer Farms lists that their white layers lay 240 to 300 plus eggs a year, and that's from Metzer Farms specifically. It is a Metzer Farms developed breed, so you could probably expect that wherever you're getting your white layers from. But that's a high egg production. So that is awesome. I love that this alternative exists because I too love the look and appearance of a Pekin duck, but I don't want those leg issues. So I thought you would find all of that cool, Krissy. I thought you would be really excited to talk about the white layer.
For sure. I've never had one myself, but I definitely think they're a great alternative to Pekins because if you're wanting that white feathers or lots of eggs, it's just a great option, especially compared to Pekin.
Another thing about the white layer is they are not an APA accepted breed. So they are not an exhibition bird. This is mainly for us backyard keepers that are just looking for some fun breeds to keep in our backyard, hybrids are usually pretty appealing to us, especially egg layer hybrids, especially if you're in like a homestead setting. This is a very appealing breed to you. Goes hand in hand with the Golden 300, really, as two of the top egg-laying breeds that you can keep in your backyard.
A really great option for pet owners.
Yeah, I love them. Cupcake is a cutie pie. We love her so much. She looks like a pekin, and you know what's really awesome is I actually had a lot of issues with pekin ducks being bullied out of my flock. My flock, like, hates pekins. I've told you about that quite a few times.
Yeah.
Mainly because of their weight. My flock decides that they're not able to keep up, and they reject them. And it's happened every time we've had a pekin in our flock. It doesn't happen with the white layer. So I basically ruled, because I was wondering at first if it was a white feather thing. Like, my flock hated white feathers because it was, like, high visibility, and that was the concern.
Yeah.
And so I was like, maybe it's that. Or it was weight, and those were the two things I was wondering if it was. And turns out it is weight. My birds did not like the size of pekin ducks.
It doesn't really surprise me that with the amount of mobility issues that pekin ducks can have, that the flock would reject them based on the fact that they can't keep up and they're seen as a weakness to the flock.
Yeah, and this is a general, like, this is just something I've gathered over time, hearing a bunch of people's experience, like, in my inbox and stuff. Almost every time I hear a case of flock bullying, it's pekins. It's always the pekins that are getting picked on, and it's the other birds that are picking on. It is a really, really common thing to go through with pekins, especially if you're keeping pekins integrated into a flock of many, many different breeds, many different weight classes. It seems like a common thing. I can't say it for sure is because I'm just going off of the messages that I'm getting. But yeah, I love the white layer as an alternative. It's going to save you so much of the weight-related health issues that come with pekin ducks. And they really do have just as charming of a personality. I think the personality is pretty consistent with my Golden 300's personality, which is very sweet. The Golden 300s in general are like a sweeter khaki Campbell, and I think the white layer has a very, very similar personality.
And next up, we're going to be answering some questions that were sent in by our followers on our social channels. Every week, we plan on putting out a post asking for your questions for a chance for your question to get answered on the show. So first up, we have a question from Robbie who asked, should you cut ducks' toenails?
No. So, no, but you might have to. It depends entirely on your environment. Typically, like, I know me and Krissy keep our ducks on pea gravel. The roughness of pea gravel is going to be enough to maintain your duck's nails. I don't clip my nails. Do you clip your duck's nails?
To clip Sugar's nails, but that's it.
Of course.
Raven also has one toenail that's like kind of backwards, so I clip that one sometimes too. But Sugar just doesn't wear her nails down. No, of course. Yeah. She doesn't wear her nails down like the other ducks do, which is also common for call ducks who are raised in raised pens. They often, from what I've seen, do have overgrown toenails that need to be trimmed because they're not wearing them down.
Yeah, if they're living in a outdoor environment, typically you won't have to. There's going to be exceptions to that rule. Another exception would be, say you only have soft surface. I actually have seen some people who they have a run and they keep all their ducks on pine shavings. You're probably going to have to cut those birds' nails down. They'll probably get overgrown in those cases, but in most circumstances in a backyard setting, you will not need to. The only other time I can think of that I've almost had to, but didn't end up actually doing it, is mating season. Because your drakes mounting your hens, if their toenails are longer, they could do some feather damage to the backs of the hens. So I've been like close to doing it, and then I just didn't really end up having to because I don't know.
And just keep in mind, if you are going to have to clip your duck's toenails, they are just like dogs and cats, and they do have quicks in their nails. So if you cut too much off, you could hit that quick and then they can bleed, which for a bird that's super small, bleeding even a little bit can be quite dangerous. So make sure you have either blood clotting powder specifically made for birds on hand, or in an emergency situation, you could just use like cornstarch to stop the bleeding. But ideally, you just clip off a very small amount of their nail so you don't hit the quick at all, and just keep up with the regular maintenance on that.
Yeah, the quick is usually really visible, so just look for it, look up what a quick looks like, and look for it, and you'll be all good.
Unless they have black nails, then it's really hard.
Yeah. So even my dark-footed ducks, I can see they're quick. Their nails are like super, super dark. I would bring my parrot in here and show you, but he has like the bird version of Dark Nails, and his quick is still pretty visible. It's not like a dog's nails. Dogs, like when their nails are black, it is solid black, oddly. I don't know why birds still has like a transparency to it.
Could be wrong, because I only ever have to clip that weird back toe on Raven, but I think her toenails are like fully black, but I guess I've never really like stared at them and been like, what color are your toenails? Are they transparent or not?
Yeah.
But I could be wrong. I haven't really like looked that closely because I've never had to cut them.
I'm thinking of when I had hey, give me the little gray call duck with the black feet. I'm gonna look. Got a duck right here for you. We gotta guess. We're gonna be assessing some feet. She's so cute. I love this call duck.
She's adorable.
I need to show you guys. Let me see if I can get her in focus. She's such a cutie patootie. Hi. How come you're already huge? Let me see your feet. I mean, they're like microscopic. But no, hers are transparent. You could see. If you ever need to see better, hold it up to a light. They actually make trimmers with a light installed, so you could see really good. But yeah, hers are transparent. You're gonna have to look at Raven later and let me know, because I'm curious. Okay, here's the duck back. Thanks, Dee Dee. It was Dee Dee's first time picking up a duck, apparently. Val asked, I live in SWPA and use kiddie pools for my ducks to swim. Unfortunately, we get some cold weather in the winter. They have a big heated water bowl, but I'd love to know if there's a heater or de-icer safe for the pools. Seen some at Tractor Supply. I don't know how to install and keep my ducks from getting hurt by touching it.
So personally, I use the Farm Innovators pond de-icer. It's basically just a circle, and then you just drop it into the pond and plug it in. Mine goes down far enough in my pond that I'm not really concerned about them touching it, but I also don't expect that it would be super hot to the touch, because the water in the pond is only just above freezing. So like the water is cold, and that actually does really well for me, especially when it's like in the 15 to 20 degrees. Did you just see that? I missed it because I was
Did you see that?
thinking in my head.
A bug fell from the roof of my office. It was on my face. I'm so sorry.
Make sure you keep that in.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I was fighting for my life. Okay, keep going. That's still on me. Hang on. I need a minute.
Why did I jump? I think I jumped because I heard you.
All right, we're good. Sorry.
Okay, it's dead, right?
I hope so. I threw the blanket. It was on the blanket. I'm just getting rid of the blanket. We're good. It's gone now. Okay. Z's problem when he gets back up here.
So the one that I use, I have it linked in my Amazon storefront, and I really do like it. It's not perfect at keeping the pond unfrozen when it's like 0 degrees out, but there's always at least like a little watering hole in it where it keeps that specific spot unfrozen, which makes it a lot easier for me to break up the ice if I need to. And when it's like 15 or 20 degrees out, if anything, there's like a very thin layer of ice that even just the duck's own feet could break right through. Also, if you're worried about using electricity in your pen or with your birds, in the winter, I used to just fill up like cement mixing tubs with 5-gallon buckets of water, just like throw a couple buckets in so that they could still swim, and then just dump them out at night so that they didn't freeze overnight, and then fill them up a new one in the morning, which I think is a great solution if you don't have access to electricity out in your pen.
That's what I'm doing right now, because we used in our pond, we used a bird bath de-icer, and it did great all year until we got the like below freeze, like I think it was like -10-degree days. And then it froze. So it was fine up until then. We had the pond fully up and functional until then with the bird bath. It was like a little bird bath disc. I think it's in my Amazon storefront too. And we just had that one in the pond. We didn't have like a hardcore de-icer. Next year, we'll probably have a hardcore de-icer for that pond. A lot of people ask me how I keep the big duck pond unfrozen, and they think I use a de-icer for that. But the big duck pond is groundwater and it's continuously flowing. So it doesn't really ever freeze. This was one of the few years where it did actually freeze, and it only froze for like a day, and then it unfroze.
That must be so nice.
It's so nice. It gets a thin layer on the top, but you know how running water is. It takes forever for that to freeze. And the only time it actually freezes is when the ground freezes below the water table. So like we know where the water table is in that pond. And so we could tell once the ground freezes to the depth of the water table, that's when the pond starts to actually freeze. Water level will like slowly drop, and then it'll freeze over. So we see it coming. But the pond's back up. The weather got back above freezing, and so the pond's back flowing. So we don't really use a de-icer on that pond because it's really never an issue. except for this year, apparently.
Gotcha. Okay, our next question is from Bond Mountain Farm. They asked, what supplements do I give ducks from the time they come home until they're adult ducks?
Vitamats. Vitamats is bombs. You don't have to use it from the time they get home as ducklings until they're adults, but definitely in the first week of life especially, it is fantastic. I'm going to grab a bag real quick so I can show you guys what that looks like.
I love Vitamats because it was specifically formulated for ducks, whereas most other supplements are formulated for chickens and they just kind of add ducks onto the label as like, oh, you can use it for these guys too.
All of the products that we use here, this is my favorite medkit product. I think every single situation that we come across, this is my first recommendation. Whether the birds are sick, they're stressed, they're having a bunch of weird symptoms, you don't know what's going on, they're going through a hard molt. This stuff is formulated for waterfowl. It's incredible. I love it. We have so many bags of it here. First week of life, both of the birds in our brooder, actually I just took the week-old ones off the Vitamet. It is fantastic. It has probiotics. It has all of the essential niacin that waterfowl need, and I know that niacin is a big concern, so there's no additional supplementation you have to do with the Vitamets. This is like my baby. When Metzer Farms came out with this, because this is a Metzer Farms product, when they came out with this, I was like, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. Because before, you'd have to go through and check all of the components of the supplements to see if it had what you were actually trying to get for waterfowl. And this has everything you need all in one bag. And it's available at Tractor Supply. There's my Metzer Farms Vitamets ad. It's not an ad, not sponsored. This is genuinely how I know Krissy feels about this product too. But that's genuinely how I feel about that product.
I use it for all of my ducklings too. And last summer when we had the heat wave, I had given it to them as well. And I think it's a great product. And I'm so grateful that they came out with it. Because truthfully, I don't think a waterfowl specific supplement existed until then. So it's great that we have something that we can really recommend that we really trust. And then as far as adult duck supplements, the only thing I supplement is calcium for laying hens.
That's what I was
during
about
laying
to say
season,
too.
Which I just use flaked oyster shells for that.
My drakes used to always eat the oyster shells. Can I be honest about that? I would literally put it would always make Dee Dee laugh because I'd put it out, and when I'd put it out, only the drakes would go to it, and I'd be like, no, like what the heck?
That's so interesting. My drakes never even touch it.
My drakes are just like brats, and they just like they see it and they think it's food. I don't know. They're weirdos.
They might think it's a treat or something, but I genuinely, I only ever see my hens eat it, and I only ever see them eat it when they are actively laying. So that's actually one of the indicators I use at the beginning of laying season. Like right now, I know that S'more is laying. I know that Blackberry's laying. Well, I know she's laying because she lays black eggs. But I know that Lemon and Honey are also laying because I see them every morning when I open the door. They swim, and then when they're done swimming, they go and they eat oyster shells together. So it's my indication that I know they're laying.
I don't think my drakes indulge in it, if that makes sense. I don't think they actually go and eat a bunch. I think they're nosy and they go over and I see them eat it because I had just put it out. And so I see them go mess with it. I don't even know if they're actually uptaking it. They're just messing with it. You know how they drive their bill in.
Yeah.
But.
And to be fair to them, drakes also do need calcium for their bones and everything. They just don't need as much as laying hens.
Mine just have the strongest bones in the world because they love their oyster shells, I guess. I have no idea. It's super weird. Every single time. It's only my bantams though. My standards don't do it. All right. Last question that we're going to cover in this episode. Kayla asked, do you have any tips for making it easier for duck sitters when you go out of town?
Yes, absolutely. So honestly, I don't like to go out of town because I don't like to leave my ducks. And I get travel anxiety, so I don't like to travel. But sometimes you have to travel. Sometimes it's good to take a vacation. So I prefer to have someone that will actually come and stay at the house. And what I do for them is I write out a very detailed list of what you have to do. Incredibly detailed, to a point where it's almost as if if I died today, you could refer to this note and know exactly how to take care of my birds. But then I also provide them with a simpler task list that's not super in depth for just what you need to know, what you need to do every day. I would say make sure you label your feed containers. So especially if you have multiple species of birds, they're labeled, because if people if you don't have poultry, you're not going to recognize what the duck food looks like versus what the chicken food looks like. So I have all of my metal trash cans labeled with what species they're for. I would also say make sure you leave out multiple water sources. I sometimes will fill up like every bucket I can find around the house and leave them out there just because I'm like, well, what if something happens? I don't want them to be without water. And I would also recommend cleaning out the pond and honestly the coop before you go. Your pet sitter should not have to deal with cleaning those things unless you're gone for like an extended period of time and they need to clean them. I'd prefer to not make my pet sitter have to do that because it is a long process and kind of icky.
That was really good. The only thing I would add is emergency vet numbers. So if you have a list of vets that you call if something goes down, just make sure those are listed in your care instructions so that God forbid, like big emergency or injury happens in a pinch, they know where to go and who to call.
Absolutely.
The other thing that I like to do is I like to make sure that I have a backup situation for their bathing water in case that sometimes with the draining of ponds and all of that, if you don't just have a simple dump kiddie pool, or even sometimes the simple dump kiddie pool can be hard for people to flip. So I like to give them the option of these cement totes that Krissy was talking about earlier. Make sure that you have those like on standby, somewhere that's easy for them to find them so that they have a way to fill up a smaller water source so the ducks can still get their bathing time in, even if they don't have their full pond.
And one other thing that I would add for other anxiety-ridden duck parents out there is I have cameras on my flock. So if I get nervous because I'm away for an extended period of time, I will check on them all the time just to make sure they're all there and they're all good. And they always have been because I have incredible pet sitters. I really do appreciate having that. Also, like we said earlier, it's much easier for the chickens because people can really just take care of them from their phones. You could install a automatic coop door for your ducks to be let out in the morning, but they still have to be put in at night. So you need to have somebody coming by at least once a day.
Yeah. I also stalk my birds via camera. I couldn't live without my security camera. I stalk them all the time, even if I'm just in the house and I'm wondering what they're doing.
I want to know who's laying what eggs. So I'm like,
yeah, true. I don't have one inside the coop though.
My coop security is a little over the top, but
I'm jealous.
Whatever.
I'll get there.
And that brings us to the end of episode 2 of the Duck Ladies Pondcast. I want to take some time to thank you all again so much for watching. We are so incredibly grateful for the support you guys showed us in episode 1. We really didn't know how it was going to go, and we are just blown away by how incredible you guys are and how much you've supported the show and your kind messages already. And we're so excited to do it again next week. If you like the show, please make sure to leave us a comment, follow us on our social channels to stay up to date, and make sure you keep an eye out for our post asking for questions that you want us to answer on next week's show. And if you want to support the podcast, make sure to leave a review on your favorite place to listen because it really helps us out in growing our show.
And last thing before we let you guys go, if you love duck-themed clothing or accessories, make sure to check out both of our merch channels. We will have them linked in the show notes if you're listening to this, and they will also be available at the link in our bio if you're watching us on YouTube. Trust me, we have some really cute stuff on there. You're not going to want to miss out on it. And that's all I got for this one. Bye, guys.